Okay, everybody, I'd like to welcome you all to the 2023 Appalachian Trail Hall of Fame induction. My name is Hawk Metheny, and I serve as the Vice President of Trail Management at the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. I'm honored and pleased to be here with all of you today at this prestigious event. The Appalachian Trail Conservancy's mission is to protect, manage, and advocate for the Appalachian National Scenic Trail. ATC accomplishes our mission through an extensive network of partnerships, including the Appalachian Trail Museum, our sponsor and host of this event. In reviewing this year's list of inductees to the Hall of Fame, I'd like to commend both those of you who submitted nominations and the selections of the Hall of Fame nominating committee. The variety of backgrounds and history of the inductees speaks to what it takes to build, maintain, protect, and advocate for the Appalachian Trail. The folks we're going to be honoring today have given their careers, their life energy towards a common cause, a cause that aligns us not only through a physical resource, but also as a community. And many of you are active and involved and have been for a long time in that community, so you know what I'm referring to. And it takes all of us to sustain the AT day to day and into the future. Today's inductees represent kind of a cross-section of our community. And just looking at the notes of who's coming in, you know, an early builder of the AT and a co-founder of a trail club, a legendary trail maintainer from Maine, the trail's premier historian, and a much revered ambassador for long-distance hiking. So a very nice cross-section this year, Jim. Well done. Okay, so what I'd like to do first is just recognize some Hall of Fame inductees from the past that have joined us here today. I hope my list is accurate, but we'll be sure to recognize you all. So we have Trail Boss here, Chris Brunton. Could you stand and say hello to us? There he is. Hey, Chris. All right. Warren Doyle. Yay. We have Warren in the corner. Thank you, Warren. Larry Luxembourg. There's Larry. Is Bob Peoples here today? No, Bob didn't make it. Okay. Lori Pottiger? No, okay, registered, not yet arrived. Okay, on the way in. All right, good to hear. And Tom Speaks. Is Tom here? Yes. Hey, Tom. Tom was a member of the 2022 class, couldn't make it last year. Glad you could join us this year, Tom. I'd also like to recognize ATC's President and CEO, Sandy Mara. Who happens to be married to Trail Boss. Many of you may know that.
That's my real name.
Right, claim to fame, yes. And I'd also like to introduce members of the Appalachian Trail Museum Board. Could you all please stand? Okay, Larry, Bill, Jim. Okay. All right, thanks folks for your work. Okay, next I'm going to reintroduce Larry Luxembourg, who's going to come in and give us some remarks about the AT Museum's work.
Oh, thanks, Hawk, and we're glad to have you back. We tried Hawk once before he passed the test, so so here he is again. So we've been having these Hall of Fame events since 2011, and it's one of the things we're most proud of at the museum. It was the idea of Jim Foster years ago, and the way we work at the AT Museum, it's well illustrated by what happened with the Hall of Fame. So in 2010, Jim came to me and he said he had this idea for a Hall of Fame. And then about 2 weeks later, he said, "What are you guys doing about it?" And I said, I said, "Jim, how can we help you get this done?" And he's been working at it and making it a success ever since. So we're really appreciative of the job Jim has done. By the way, his portfolio spans everything from, although he denies it, he was a lawyer, and he's done all the legal work for the museum, but he also does IT work, carpentry, electrical work, and so forth. So if we ever need to replace Jim, that's a tough portfolio to get all in one person. Speaking of tough portfolios to replace, every year since the first year, 2011, in addition to the inductees, we've given a Lifetime Achievement Award. And we've given that to various personalities in the AT community. But I do have to confess, we have a home team bias. So often it has gone to somebody who's made a great contribution to the AT Museum. So this year, we're giving it to somebody who's been involved with the museum for a long time. And talk about somebody who would be tough to replace. This would be our Help Wanted ad. We need a CPA with 60 years of experience who's willing to do all our accounting work for free, as well as lots of other things, projects, helping out with the local community and the park management and so forth. But anyway, we have had somebody who's answered that call, and with his late wife, who was an extremely enthusiastic greeter for the museum for many years, the two of them have made really successful achievements for the museum. They've been instrumental in our success. I don't believe Jay Sexton is here today. He was planning to make it, but anyway, we are awarding this year's Lifetime Achievement Award to Jay. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Larry. Congratulations, Jay, and family and friends of Jay. Next, I'd like to introduce Jim Foster, who is the chair of the AT Hall of Fame nominating committee, and he'll begin introducing inductions for us. Before we do that, there's one thing I wanted to say here. For those of you who know both me and my longtime colleague, Brian King, the only thing rarer than me wearing a tie is Brian not wearing a tie. so here we go. Couldn't pass that up.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Jim Foster. It's my honor to be chair of the Hall of Fame Committee, and let me thank all of you for coming. Thank you to Hawk Metheny for again emceeing this year's induction. As your program says, Hawk is Vice President of Regional and Trail Operations at ATC, and I'm proud to call him a good friend. I also knew Hawk when he wasn't a big shot like he is now. So I'd like to also welcome my good friend Ron Tipton, who's helping me give out the awards again this year. Ron thru-hiked the AT in 1978. He spent his career as an advocate for public land preservation, national park protection, and hiking trails. He became the CEO of ATC in 2013 and retired 5 years later. Ron is a founder of ALDA, Appalachian Long Distance Hikers Association, and an important member of our Hall of Fame selection committee. So Ron's going to help me out. As Hawk mentioned, Tom Speaks is here. We interviewed him this morning because he didn't have a chance to make it last year. Please stand again, Tom, so that we can officially welcome you. Before we get started with the induction, I want to remind you that soon we'll be making plans for our 2024 Hall of Fame class. That's the 14th class. In December, we'll open our site for nominations. We'll make a public announcement about nominations fairly soon, probably about in November sometime, around Thanksgiving. Early in 2024, the committee will look at the nominations that we've received, and we look at all the nominations we've received since 2011. Some people are not clear on that. I have a database, I think it's about 50 pages now, of all the nominations we've received since the beginning, and we continue to look at that. And then we'll go through the process. Once we close nominations from the public, we'll announce the 2024 class in the spring, and we'll also announce the time and place for our 2024 induction sometime next year. We've been asked why we haven't had a Hall of Fame banquet lately. You may remember that in 2019 we had our last Hall of Fame banquet here, and I think it was pretty successful. We'd very much like to have a banquet again. There are two reasons why we haven't had a banquet. One of them is the same thing we hear about everything that's changed over the last few years, and that is, of course, COVID. Thankfully, the pandemic seems to be over, but COVID is still with us. The second issue beyond COVID is that we need a group of volunteers to run our banquet. The museum is almost an all-volunteer organization. The only exceptions are Julie, who's standing in the back, Julie Queen, our wonderful manager, and Missy Shank, who manages the Iron Masters Hostel. Other than that, we're all volunteers. So what we need is about 3 to 5 people who'd be interested in organizing a banquet. I know there's 3 to 5 among you who have the skills. Please consider doing that. We'd love to start having banquets again, but that's the reason why we haven't so far. If you feel led to do that, contact Julie, or contact me, or contact Larry, and we'll give you all the help we can. We are happy to celebrate another solid year of progress at the museum. Our museum manager, Julie Queen, as I said, is doing a great job. The interactive map display, which was dedicated about a year ago, is partially complete. Not quite done, but it's partially complete, and it's working, but there's more to come with that. The outdoor shelter is partially complete. You can see that just about a month ago, I think, we had the dedication for that, and that's a great addition. The former Dean's Gap shelter. If you haven't been to the museum lately, in the last year or so especially, there's a lot of new stuff there, and you really ought to come and see it. I also want to mention a program that we started over the summer. It's called Tell Us Your AT Hike Story. It's not really my program. I helped with some of the technology aspects of it, but it's a really interesting program. The idea is, I would say close to 100% of hikers these days have a smartphone, and the idea is you can record a 5-minute story of your hike on the trail. And we have some really nifty software that will allow you to, once you've recorded it on your phone, and we have stuff on our website that shows you how to do it, then you upload it to us, and the ones that are acceptable to us, that they're from legitimate hikers and that sort of thing, we'll post. We're already underway with it. We've got quite a few stories, and I encourage you to get on our website, which is www.atmuseum.org. Look for Tell Us Your Story, and it's relatively easy, especially for younger folks who are very into technology, and if you're not one of those, probably your son or your grandson or your daughter or granddaughter can help you with it to do it. We have some papers back there near where Julie and Mitch and Karen are. If anybody's interested, you can pull one of the flyers out, and that gives you some information. It also has one of those scan things that you can use to get your smartphone right to our site. So I encourage folks to do that. And by the way, Larry and I have done our 5-minute stories, and I wouldn't exactly call us young, at least not me. I hope you'll also get a chance to look at the Iron Masters Mansion. The museum took over operations of the Iron Masters Hostel in 2020. Under the wonderful leadership of our innkeeper, Missy Shank, we've continued and even enhanced its tradition as one of the best overnight experiences on the trail. One of the coolest things when I was there doing some work was, I don't know if you're familiar with the 32 Up project, the lady who is hiking the trail with, I think, 15 of her kids, and they were there the night I was there. That was a pretty overwhelming experience. So the Iron Masters is doing great work, and we hope you'll visit that. But we've kind of put our own signature on the AT. You can see Lori from last year's Hall of Fame in our Hall of Fame room, and we've turned that into a Hall of Fame room, and there's more to come from that. Lori's picture only shows a little bit of 4 of the classes, the first 4 classes. We just expanded that, and now we have the first 7 classes. Our goal is within the next year or so, we want to bring that up to date. It's a matter of, again, volunteer time and money and that sort of thing. So I encourage you to take a look at that whenever you're in the museum. We have a great website. This is our website address, and please take a look at it. Of course, we can't do any of this without 2 things, volunteers and money. So if you are in a financial position to help us out, we encourage you to make contributions to the museum. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so your contribution may be tax deductible, and we encourage you to do that. So let's move on to the Hall of Fame. These are the criteria that we've had since the Hall of Fame was developed. And we've deliberately established it as a Hall of Fame to gather people who, in many, many different aspects of supporting the trail. Pioneers of the trail, Myron Avery, Benton Mackay, those kind of people. And when we're going to induct one of those people today. Those who organize or directed major trail organizations like ATC and the AT maintaining clubs, longtime trail maintainers, leaders, hikers, going to induct one of those today, and other persons who've enriched the culture or community of the AT by their association with it. People like Bob Peoples, for example. This, of course, is the stick that we give to each of our inductees. We have 4 of them here. They are done by our great friend Bodacious, John Baudet. I was down at the AT Vista. I'm not sure how many of you folks were there. It was a great time, and it happens to be about 10 miles from where Bodacious lives, and so Bodacious and I got together and had a great time, and he handed the sticks over to me. We also give out and that's Bodacious, of course. We also give out a certificate. This is the one for Bob Peoples, which he got in 2018. Let's move on to the class of 2023. I'm going to announce the honorees in alphabetical order. Many of us who have hiked long distances on the AT have been transformed by the experience. Here's a tale about one of us. His name is Meredith J. Eberhart. He grew up in a remote part of the Ozarks, developing his love of the outdoors there. He went to optometry school, got married, and raised 2 kids along the Space Coast of Florida. He had a very successful career as an optometrist, and by 1993 was ready to retire. Meredith, or MJ, was not very pleased with his life at that point. He began spending time alone on a plot of land he was developing along Nimblewell Creek in North Georgia. He started walking around his property. He climbed the nearby mountain, which was called Springer Mountain, and saw a pretty famous trail begin there. He started hiking on it. He eventually made it all the way to Pennsylvania. At that point, he, at age 60, decided to embark on his first great adventure, a 4,400-mile walk from Florida to Cap Gaspé in Quebec. He had changed. He shed most of his possessions. He let his hair grow long, as you can see from this picture. MJ Eberhart had become Nimblewell nomad. Over the next 15 years, he hiked 34,000 miles, including the Triple Crown of long-distance trails. That's the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail, and the rest of the 11 National Scenic Trails. Nearing his 75th birthday, he vowed to hang up his hiking boots. Nimberwill's friends knew that this was unlikely to happen. They were right. In 2021, at age 83, the Nomad started the AT yet again for a third time. In November 2021, he finished the trail and became the oldest known person to hike it in 1 year. It was fitting, as you see here, that Nimberwill was met at the end by his friend Dale Graybeard Sanders, the previous record holder. If you've come to all of our banquets, you know that he came several years ago to one of our banquets. The two trail champions toasted each other with glasses of champagne. Is the Nomad done hiking? No one who knows him would bet that he is. We are honored to have Nimberwill with us today. Please come up to receive your awards and say a few words, Nimberwill.
Old people blubber, and I'm an old man, so I'm gonna blubber at you. This is the most amazing day in my entire life. And I have people in this room and all over this country and all over the world to thank for the inspiration and the wonderful love and caring that's come back to me, and the energy that I've gotten from each and every one of you that's uplifted me and encouraged me. I think really all I need to do is just express my love and thanks and appreciation to each and every one of you. This is one of the most incredible communities that exist in humankind, is the outdoor community and the hiking community, and that I've been embraced and taken in and made part of it. Has just been one of the most beautiful and blessed times in my life. So I think really all I need to do to close this up is just try to look at each and every one of you that's here and just thank you.
Every hiker who summits Mount Katahdin, the northern terminus of the AT, knows the iconic sign that graces the mountaintop. Lester Kenway is one of the volunteers who put that sign in place. Although he's climbed Katahdin 3 times with that sign, it represents just a small part of Lester's volunteer efforts on behalf of the AT. Lester's first trail crew experience was in 1972 as a member of the Bates Outing Club, now a member of ATC and the Maine Appalachian Trail Club for more than 45 years. Lester has chaired the sign committee, managed MATC's trail crew program, built shelters and trails, and served as MATC's president. Lester says his goal is to build things once and build them to last, primarily using stone. He was a pioneer of using the grip hoist and other methods for moving stone that are now widely used on the AT and other trails. The late Bob Proudman, also a Hall of Famer, called Lester the quintessential crew leader, always prepared with decades of trail building experience. Lester says building and maintaining trails creates something good for people and something good for the earth. Lori Pottiger, who's in the back of the room, formerly ATC's Information Services Manager and a Hall of Famer too, has said he pioneered new backcountry trail construction and rehabilitation techniques for efficiently moving heavy rocks that have been adopted up and down the AT and are now standard in trail building. According to an article in the Portland Press Herald, Lester Kenway does not stand out on a trail crew. He talks quietly, moves slowly, and isn't one to brag. But the woodland and mountain trails he has designed have made Maine's wet and rooty footpaths sound. The trail construction methods he has created are now used all over the AT, also on Western trails, as well as in Italy and Nepal. Due to a family commitment, Lester's unable to be with us today. He promises to come to another induction soon, and we certainly hope that he does. Accepting the awards for Lester is Karen Lutz, former ATC Regional Manager and a member of our Hall of Fame Selection Committee. Come on up, Karen.
Thanks, Jim. As Jim explained, Lester's not able to be with us today. It's my pleasure and honor to accept his induction into the AT Hall of Fame on his behalf. I've known Lester for a number of years, and he is unquestionably a legend who belongs in the Hall. I spoke to Lester on Thursday and asked him what he might want me to say to you today. Lester is a man of few words. He said, "Thanks." On a more serious note, I did talk to him again last night, and he had a few more things to say, not much. Here's what he had to say, and I quote, "Thank you for the honor of being inducted into the AT Hall of Fame. Someone once asked me what I liked about trail work. I like to do things that are good. It's what I like about people and the earth that stand the test of time," and that really sums up Lester. The AT has done more for me than I'll ever be able to do for it. Thanks again for this recognition. So he expanded a little bit. My only regret in offering these comments on Lester's behalf this afternoon is that you all aren't entertained by Lester's extraordinarily dry Maine humor. I would be remiss if I didn't add a few comments about the man who served as the trail supervisor for Baxter State Park for 22 years. He led the Maine AT Club work crew for 13 years. He created Maine's Force Trail Crew program and ran it for 30 years. Lester recognized the essential need to foster the next generation of trail stewards, and he led the Maine Conservation Corps and the Student Conservation Association's Student Conservation Corps. He led the construction of the Lehman Brook, Long Pond Stream, and Namakonta lean-tos. He designed the 5.4-mile Little Boardman and the 4.7-mile Rainbow Stream, Rainbow Flowage relocations. It's not hyperbole to suggest that Lester revolutionized trail construction and footpath hardening techniques. My favorite phrase that many of us know when discussing Lester is, "There's the right way, there's the wrong way, and there's the Kenway." Anyone who's been involved with complex technical trail construction has most likely used a technique that was pioneered by Lester, whether it be sophisticated rigging, construction of elaborate crib walls, or any number of trail hardening techniques. Lester's skills are legendary, and he has generously shared his knowledge and gift with AT clubs and crews, all kinds of trails across the United States, including the Adirondacks, Yellowstone, and Grand Teton National Parks, and trails internationally. But it doesn't stop there. Lester recognized the need for a place where trail builders and maintainers could acquire hard-to-find, high-quality specialty tools. He put it upon himself to create a small niche business called Trail Services, a one-stop shop for trail builders to find grip hoists, all manners of rigging devices, specialty rock hammers, and various other specialty tools that aren't available at Lowe's or Home Depot or your favorite local hardware store. In closing, I hope to join me in welcoming Lester Kenway to the Appalachian Trail Hall of Fame.
I just have a real quick Lester story here. I had the benefit of still have the benefit of working with Lester many years in a variety of roles. A few years ago, we were planning our regional partnership committee meeting, and it was scheduled to be in New Hampshire. So I was talking with Lester about it, and I said, Lester, can you think you can come to the meeting? And he, as Karen said, his dry humor. He said, well, Hawk, he says, us Mainers, we don't mind New Hampshire. It insulates us from the rest of the country. If you're from Maine, you know what I mean.
I want to thank my good friend Karen Lutz for accepting the induction on behalf of Lester. With a trail as old and with as much history as the AT, it tends to attract folks who become students of its history. I'm going to mention 4 of these prominent individuals. Larry Luxembourg is one. He's our founder and president, but you've heard a lot about Larry when we inducted him into the Hall of Fame and other times as well. Another one is Gwen Luce, who is our vice president and museum curator, and she in particular is an expert on the women of the trail and wrote a great book on that. Tom Johnson was a third. He was a good friend of mine. We lost Tom at the end of 2020, and he was elected to the Hall in 2021. The last one I want to mention is Mills Kelly, who's a professor at George Mason University. He is the host of the wonderful history podcast of the AT, The Green Tunnel. If you enjoy podcasts and if you enjoy AT history, you absolutely must listen to the Green Tunnel. I've listened to every episode at least once, and I eagerly await every new episode as they release it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that today we are honoring the greatest living historian of the AT, Brian King. This year was an interesting one for our Hall of Fame selection committee. One of our members had been nominated for the Hall of Fame several times. He had recently retired from his position at ATC. Many members of the committee thought that the time had come for him to be elected to the Hall of Fame. Let me be clear that one of those advocates was not Brian King. Brian did take part in the election process, but never voted for himself at any stage of the process. Nevertheless, Brian was elected easily. That should give you an idea of how highly thought of he is by the rest of the committee. Brian B. King began work for the AT in June of 1987 after 8 years working as a volunteer on the Appalachian Trailway News and the board's Public Relations Committee. I wrote this script, and then Brian said today at the interviews that he actually got something like $10 an issue. So I guess he wasn't quite a total volunteer, but he wasn't paid much. For decades, when he was employed by ATC, he was responsible for ATC's publications, sales program, and the archives. He is the author of the award-winning trail history, The Appalachian Trail, Celebrating America's Hiking Trail. After a distinguished career, Brian retired from ATC in 2022. A native of Washington, D.C., Brian is a graduate of Georgetown University and previously attended the University of the South and Northwestern University's National Journalism Institute. Prior to joining the ATC, Brian worked for the Charleston, South Carolina Evening Post, the Colorado Springs Sun, the Associated Press, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the Ford Foundation. Brian, please come up. It's our honor to welcome you to the AT Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Jim and Hawk, and I'm not sure I've seen this many troublemakers in the same room since the last ATC staff retreat, not including my 3 former bosses in that characterization. It is an honor, and I'm not that comfortable with the attention or the implications of it, but it is an honor to be included in this group of, well, it was 54, and now it's 58. The Hall of Fame is a great way to recognize people that in the trail project who've been forgotten and not really recognized. But as flattered and as grateful as I am, I do wish that the hall didn't focus so much on single individuals working alone, although it has to do that by definition. In my own case, I can't think of anything I did that turned out well, in which I did not rely and draw on a large number of others. For example, among those already inducted, certainly all 4 Daves, especially Startzel, who gave me enormous space for 25 years to experiment, not always without pain for him. And Lori, who, as I noted last year, had my back in many ways for 3 decades. There are others, Chuck Rinaldi, Arch Nichols, Charlie Perry, definitely Don King, Larry, Marianne Skeen, Bob Proudman, Lester, who was the deciding vote on in the executive committee on the first coffee table book I did. Even Warren. All were sources of perspective, ideas, and corrections. Looking at you, Morgan. And of course, there was the ever-present ghost of Gene Stevenson. I can't think of many things that did not originate with another staff member, especially Laura Belleville, Morgan, Hawk, Karen, others in the regions, or another publisher, or a vendor, or a visiting scholar, even a board member, troublemakers like Bill O'Brien, and my accounting partner in crime, Diana Poley. Sales operation, which was mentioned, it alone could never have established itself as its own brand without the hard work of people like Teresa Tumblin and Renee Rogers. My book was the idea of the top people at Rizzoli, not me. Leanna, right there, and Gwen, and Tom Johnson all bought their books to me, not the other way around. And my friend Ann there is still trying. The same for almost all the new books and the revamping of the guidebooks and maps 20 plus years ago. I apologize for taking so much time with this, but I feel strongly about arguing the case that in the 102 years of the Appalachian Trail Project, no one, not even Myron Avery, achieved major accomplishments all on their own. Everyone is drawn on a web of others, and that shouldn't be overlooked. Since all of you are involved in the project, you know that. But I felt it needed to be said out loud here. And thank you, all my colleagues on the selection committee, and thank everyone for this honor and for this anti-squirrel weapon.
Just one more thing about Brian. One of the things that I value the most about Brian's involvement with the Hall of Fame committee is he brings to the knowledge of many of us, not all of us, the people who have played important roles, especially back in the early days of the AT movement, who just aren't that well known today. This particular one, probably Brian didn't bring to my attention, but he's an example. When the subject of the founders of the AT comes up, many are familiar with Benton Mackay and Myron Avery, both members of our charter class of the Hall of Fame. You might have heard of some others, like Judge Perkins or Gene Stevenson. But there are many other pioneers who first signed on to the dream of a trail from Georgia to Maine and then got the thing built. As a native and lifelong Pennsylvanian, I'm thrilled that we're finally getting around to inducting Harry Rentschler, I find that Dr. Rentschler is not all that well known, even in PA, outside of the Reading area, and maybe even among trail junkies like Brian King, Larry Luxembourg, and myself. Harry Rentschler grew up in southeastern Pennsylvania with a love of the outdoors. A physician practicing in Reading, Pennsylvania, Dr. Rentschler and some friends founded the Blue Mountain Eagle Climbing Club in 1916, which of course was well before the AT. That name came from a trek that Rentschler led up the mountain to find an eagle's nest. A decade later, Dr. Rentschler learned of Benton MacKay's dream to create a trail stretching through the wilderness from Georgia to Maine. Under his leadership, the Blue Mountain Eagle Climbing Club, often known by Pennsylvanians as BMEC, stepped up to build 102 miles of the AT from the Susquehanna to the Lehigh rivers. Dr. Rentschler led the work trips during the 5 years that it took to build the trail, using his 1917 physician's memorandum to record notes about these trips. According to BMEC's historian, Dr. Rentschler was instrumental in acquiring about 250 acres upon which the trail and a number of shelters were built. Labor came mostly from club volunteers, but some simply could not afford to volunteer. There was the case of the Sipe brothers, who could not find work because of the Depression in the early 1930s. Dr. Rentschler paid them minimal wages to work on the trail, probably from his own pocket. Rentschler's property in the Reading suburb of Burnville became the headquarters for BMEC's construction of their portion of the AT and later maintenance projects. 2 AT shelters, Eagle's Nest and Rausch Gap, were constructed there and then transported to the trail. Dr. Rentschler willed his property to BMEC, and today the Rentschler Arboretum is the headquarters of that club, and that club is by far the oldest one based in the Keystone State, maintaining the trail. Dr. Rentschler died in 1942. As I mentioned before, Dr. Rentschler is without doubt the person most responsible for building the AT in the Keystone State. We're very happy that several members of BMEC are here to celebrate the induction of Dr. Rentschler. Would all BMEC members please stand up for a moment? Thank you all so much for coming. Accepting the induction on behalf of Dr. Rentschler and BMEC is Barry Webb. Barry, please come forward.
Thank you, Jim, Hawk, Larry, members of the Museum Hall of Fame Committee, board members, other honorees, and guests. I humbly accept this honor on behalf of Dr. Rentschler and members of the Blue Mountain Eagle Climbing Club. In October, the club will celebrate its 107th year of existence. Had it not been for Dr. Rentschler, there were more than likely would not be a Blue Mountain Eagle Climbing Club. And I dare say that the length of time that it took to build the Appalachian Trail in the state of Pennsylvania would have been much longer. If Harry Rentschler could have been here at today's event, I would say that he would more than likely bestow the honors not on himself, but on the other founding members and those club members who followed him with the scouting, the marking, the mapping, the measuring of the new trail from the Lehigh River to the Susquehanna River. He would have praised them for their efforts and hard work in completing this new idea of a long-distance trail over the rockiest part of the state of Pennsylvania. As soon as the trail was marked, Dr. Rentschler led the club in the planning and the building of shelters, a day's walk apart along the club's 102-mile section of trail. Within just 2 years, the club, under his leadership,
had 5 cabins along the new Skyline Trail. In addition to the creation of the Blue Mountain Eagle Climbing Club and the development of the Appalachian Trail in the area, Dr. Rentschler, along with other club members, recognized that if we wanted to enjoy nature's environment around the trail, we would need to protect the land from destruction of loggers and miners and the clearing of the mountaintop for new development. Unlike other sections of the Appalachian Trail in northern Pennsylvania, there was no national forest or state park to naturally protect the land for which the trail would pass through. If the forest was to be maintained, something special would need to be done. As a result, Dr. Rentschler and other club members created the Blue Mountain Wilderness Park Association. The association's intention was to raise funds to acquire lands on the mountain in order to protect it for future development. In just 2 years, they were able to set aside 142 acres from development. Since that time, additional lands were purchased and then, and years later, sold to the state or the National Park Service. The idea of protecting our lands seems to be rather normal in today's world, but in the 1920s and the 1930s, it was still a rather unique concept. The Blue Mountain Wilderness Park Association was one of a few organizations devoted to the preservation concept in the eastern half of the United States at that time. The Blue Mountain Eagle Climbing Club is unique in its structure, in which Dr. Rentschler, after his death, left in his will a summer cabin and property that he wished that the club would build an arboretum, as you heard Jim speak of. This arboretum would be a location where children could come and enjoy nature's trees, flowers, and the splendid view of Blue Mountain. Thanks to his wisdom and to the efforts of a select group of club members, the club has been able to build a splendid arboretum that bears Dr. Rentschler's name. Today, the Blue Mountain Eagle Climbing Club and the Blue Mountain Wilderness Park Association are incorporated into one organizations whose goals include the preservation of the forest, protection of the wildlife, and promoting and encouraging mountain climbing, hiking, camping, and appreciation, among other things. A small section of his eulogy stated, "Dr. Rentschler's body has been assigned to Mother Nature. Never again will we see his cheery smile. Never again will we follow him in the climb to the mountainside and in the work on the trail. Never again can we go to him for words of advice and encouragement. But his spirit lives. Even now, we can feel his influence. That spirit will actuate trail activities for all time to come and will continue to inspire us and those who shall follow us in this worthy cause. Let us emulate the doctor's virtues. Let us continue to love and appreciate nature as he taught us to do. Let us honor his memory by carrying on the cause that he loved and for which he devoted his life. So on behalf of Dr. Harry Rentschler and the past and current Blue Mountain Eagle Climbing Club members and Wilderness Park Association, I thank you for this honor that you are bestowing upon him.
hadn't even thought about this today, but there's a common thread among all 4 of our inductees, I think, and that's humility. Barry was talking at the interviews this morning, and he said that he and the other folks in BMAC have spent a lot of time trying to find good pictures of Dr. Rentschler, and they're just hard to find. I mean, he did die in 1942, but they had pretty good cameras back then, and he was a prominent physician. But what he would do, according to Barry, is he would, when there was a group taking pictures, he'd just kind of fade to the background because he wasn't into a lot of publicity for himself. And Karen told you that that's the same thing with Lester Kenway. And you saw that Brian is the same thing. Brian's not out. Brian didn't do what he does for himself. And that's been my experience with the Appalachian Trail and so many other things. The people who actually get things done do it because of their love for the trail and not because of any personal gratification. And I think that's a lesson for all of us to learn. The sermon is over, by the way, if you didn't get to church this Sunday. So this is the 2023 class of the Appalachian Trail Hall of Fame. Would all the members and representatives of the 2023 class come forward again and be recognized, please? And then afterward, we would like the inductees and honorees to, again, stay for a few moments so that everybody can get pictures. So thank you for your attention. Let's get a few pictures, and then we'll turn it back over to Hawk. So please come forward, all the inductees and honorees. And
in front of the podium here. Sure. Okay, folks, we're winding down here. I just wanted to provide a couple closing remarks and build on Jim's comment a little bit. That was a theme this time with the Hall of Fame induction, as it is really every time we induct folks into the prestigious honor of the AT Hall of Fame. But I see the connection, not only the humility of the individuals, but also in the opening remarks about the contributions towards the cause and the community. I know that fuels my work every day, serving something larger than myself. It's really not about me, it's about leaving maybe the trail a little bit better when my time has come and gone. So thank you all for recognizing that. And on behalf of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, I'd like to thank again the Appalachian Trail Museum for hosting this event, the AT Hall of Fame nominating committee. Thank you for making this happen. This is a wonderful experience and very meaningful for a lot of folks. I'd also like to put a thank you out here from the several million people per year who visit the Appalachian Trail, and how all of our work makes that possible from one day to the other. It really, a lot of folks don't realize the depth of the history and what is behind the effort to sustain the AT, as we said at the start. So just want to acknowledge that for a minute. We have some refreshments in the back, some handouts, I think we have use of the room for at least another hour. So is that correct, Jim? So a lot of good social time. Meet the inductees if you haven't yet. See old friends, and just have a good time sharing this moment together. So thank you all for coming.